At the gates of Loyang, how to set up and play. First, you'll set out your supply of vegetables. You have grain, pumpkin, turnips, cabbage, beans, and leeks. Set out your supply of satisfaction tokens and cash, 1 cash and 5 cash. Set out the loan cards. Shuffle the entire deck of helper cards. For each player, they're going to start with 10 cash. They're going to take their scoring marker. It's going to start on number 1. They're going to fill their player board with the starting vegetables. Do not fill those 2 spots. They'll have their cart and storehouse card. It starts in the 1 position. They'll have their starting field that has 9 spots. And then each player has 2 sets of fields, a 6, 5, 4, and 3. They have a second set of 6, 5, 4, and 3. Shuffle up each of those and then place one set on top of the other. For the final part of setup, randomly select a starting player and give them that token. As part of setup, each player, in clockwise order, starting with the start player, will seed their home field. It has to be a vegetable listed on the card, so grain, pumpkin, or turnips, and it has to come from their store. This board is called the player's store. So they would take a grain, a pumpkin, or a turnip and seed this card. Let's say this player decides first and they decide to do a pumpkin. So they will take it from their store. They have to pay the 4 cash from their starting supply of money. And now from the supply, they would fill up the other 8 spots with pumpkin tokens. The first part of every turn is the harvest phase. Simultaneously, all players will harvest 1 vegetable from each field and place it into their cart, and then they turn over 1 private field. So for each of their fields, they'll harvest 1. So to start the game, you only have 1, but if you had multiple, you'd harvest 1 vegetable from each field, and then you turn over the next field in your deck. If this was a later round in the game and we are in the harvest phase, again, you're always pulling 1 vegetable off each of your fields and adding them to your cart. When you deplete a field and it's one of your starting fields, simply remove that from the game. When this gets depleted, since it's one of the ones you paid for that came out of the deck of cards, it would simply get put into that discard pile for later reshuffling. And always remember, at the end of harvesting, you flip over your next field card. After the harvest phase, we're going to go to the card phase. All players are going to be dealt 4 cards, and we're going to go through a draft, at the end of which each player will play 2 cards. 1 card from their hand and 1 card from the courtyard. Before beginning the card phase, it's important to remember that any cards in the discard pile now get shuffled completely back into the deck. So you'll always start with the starting player. A special rule in a 2-player game is each player, at the start of their turn, has the option to turn over an additional card and place it in the courtyard. Now, this player, the start player, has a decision. They can decide to take that card along with 1 card from their hand and play it to their play area. Remember, at the end of the card phase, each player is always going to play 1 card from the courtyard and 1 card from their hand. If they're not ready to choose the card from the courtyard they want, they're going to select a card from their hand and place it in the middle. So let's say this player has decided to wait. They've chosen that they want to place this card in the middle, and now it'll go to the next player. Now we're on the second player. They also have the option, since this is a 2-player game, to turn over an additional card, so they have an extra choice, and they have to make the same decision. Either they decide to select a card from the courtyard, any of these, along with a card from their hand, or they can decide to wait. If they make the decision to select a card from the courtyard and then select a card from their hand, they'll play those to their play area. Any remaining cards in their hand will now get put into the courtyard. So let's say this player decides they want to select this card from the courtyard, and they really want to keep this card from their hand. All these cards will now get placed into the courtyard, and now this player is now forced to make their decision. Since it's a two-player game, they can, as an option, see an extra card as a choice, but now they need to make their decision. They can select one of these 6 cards as their card from the courtyard, and they've got to select one of these 3 cards from their hand and play those to their play area. Once the player has decided on their 2 cards, they must be immediately played to their play area. So let's see the different types of cards and how they would get played. Here's an example of the 5 different types of cards you're going to find in the deck. The first one are called regular customers. Regular customers go right there. You can see the icons matching. There is no limit to the number of cards that you can have in your play area in any of the categories. Whenever you place a regular customer for the first time, you're going to take a satisfaction marker, keep it on the blue side, and then immediately put it on the bottom row. This is going to indicate that this regular customer is expecting to get their order satisfied this action round. The next type of card are casual customers. They go right there. Casual customers can have their order fulfilled whenever you desire. The next type of a card is called a market stall. When playing a market stall, it'll come to this side of your board, and you immediately fill it with the vegetables indicated on the card, and you would take those from the supply. So in this example, you would put 1 leek, 1 cabbage, and 1 turnip. The next type of card is a helper card. They simply go right here, and each helper has a special power that can help in different parts of the game. The final type of card you'll find in the deck is a field card. Field cards need to be immediately financed. They cost 2 cash, so that money can come from your supply of cash. You're also allowed to sell vegetables on your cart back to the market to finance that, and we'll show how that works later. And you always have the option to take a loan. A loan card will give you 5 cash immediately. Loans never get repaid during the game. At the very end of the game, for each loan that a player has, they will move back 1 space on the scoring track. So once you pay for your field, simply add it up here with your other fields. And then one important thing is at the end of the card phase, after both players have played their 2 cards, you're going to redistribute the starting player token. So whoever took their cards last, whoever made the final decision, is now going to become the starting player. And they'll be the starting player for the next phase, which is the action phase. Now let's cover all the actions that a player can take during the action phase. Remember, they can take these actions in any order they like. They can take these actions as many times as they like. The only exception is that you can only buy 1 2-pack during your action phase on a turn. So let's first cover sowing vegetables. You would simply take a vegetable from your card here and sow it onto an empty field that hasn't been used before. So this player may decide, I'm going to sow a cabbage in this field. Once you do that, it works the same as the home field during setup. So you'll take any tokens from the supply and fill those up in the empty spots. You can also say, I'm going to put turnips in this one, and you would take remaining turnips from the supply and fill up that card. Just always remember to pay attention to the eligible vegetables for each field. Let's next cover buying vegetables from the shop. You can only buy vegetables from your shop. You're always going to have to pay the money figure in the black box. The vegetable has to be available, so if you've depleted a supply of vegetables and there's none here to buy, you couldn't buy. But let's say the player wants to buy one of these leeks, and they're going to pay 6 money, and they just add it to their card. Next, let's cover selling vegetables to your shop. So you can take vegetables off of your card and sell them, again, here the spot has to be open. Instead of the first value, when you sell back to your shop, you get the value listed in the white box. So you'd only get 1 money for selling that pumpkin. The next action is to use your market stalls. This allows you to trade vegetables with any market stalls that you have in your playing area. You can trade for the vegetable listed as long as the token is still on the card, and you can trade any type of vegetable based on the conversion ratio. So you can see, since there's only one bowl under this turnip, it would take one vegetable of any type, just discard that to the supply, and you can get this turnip. So for example, you could say, I'm going to trade this pumpkin, return that to the supply, and simply add this turnip to your cart. Let's say instead of doing that, you wanted one of the other two. You can see, to get a cabbage in this example, since there's still a token here, you could trade in any 2 pieces of vegetable. So I could discard both these back to the supply, and then I could take this cabbage. So let's say I'll do that. I'll take these 2, discard them back to the supply because I really needed that cabbage. You're never allowed to freely discard market stalls. This card will only get discarded back to the discard pile once all the vegetables have been traded for. You are allowed to use, remember, any type of vegetable. So let's say there was only a turnip left on this card because we had gotten the leeks in a different one. I could trade a turnip for a turnip just for the effect of getting this card cleared out of my play area. For the next action, you can use or discard your helpers. So for your helper cards, you can use them for the power that they indicate. You're also able to freely discard helper cards. This is the only card type that you can freely discard. The other ones can only get discarded once they've been exhausted. Once you've either discarded or used a helper card, the card always gets returned to the discard pile. The next action we'll cover is delivering to your regular customers. Regular customers require that you make their delivery every round. So if you're unable to make the delivery, you have to turn over the satisfaction marker. And then if it's already turned over, they were already unhappy from a prior missed delivery, you've got to take a 2 penalty. So for example, this customer, we put that there to remind us that they're expecting a delivery of a bean and a leek this round. So let's say we weren't able to make it, or we choose not to make that delivery. We would simply say they're unhappy now and put it back there to indicate that we've at least addressed this card this round we've chosen, or we weren't able to make that delivery, but now they're unhappy. If on a subsequent round we came back and we were still unable to make that delivery, since they're already dissatisfied, we now have to pay a 2 money penalty. But let's say instead of upsetting them, they were still satisfied, they're expecting a delivery. We have a bean and a leek on our cart that we can use. So we're going to satisfy them. We can slide that back up to indicate that we've done that. We'll put the vegetables on the card, and we'll get the 7 money from the bank immediately into our cash right now. And then during the next round of the game, they'll be expecting this delivery, which if we're able to make, will earn us 8 money. Remember, for regular customers, you always have to deliver in order. If and when you've made this final delivery, simply return the tokens back to the supply, and you could put this card back to the discard pile. For the next action, we can serve our casual customers. Casual customers can be served whenever we desire. They have to be served with a single action. So you couldn't decide to just move 1 grain down here. As an entire action, you'd have to give them all the vegetables they need, but there is no penalty for not serving them until you're ready to. So you could leave these. But let's say we decide to serve this customer, so he requires a grain and 2 turnips. Again, we have to do it with a single action. So we have a grain and 2 turnips on our cart. We'll just play those here, or we could simply discard those to the supply, because once this casual customer is satisfied, the card's going to get discarded. We're first going to receive money. The money you're going to receive is based on whether you have more regular customers or casual customers. Since we have an equal number, we're just going to get the base amount here. We're going to get 8 money. If we had more casual customers, we're going to get penalized. We're going to get -2. So let's say this card wasn't there and we had more casual customers, we would get 8 minus 2 for 6. If we had more regular customers, we would get 8 plus 2 for 10. Here we have equal number, so we're just going to get the base. The final action we'll cover is buying one 2-pack. You'll notice it's the only action that you can do only once during your action phase. The price is going to be determined by the number of cards you have in either the market stalls or the helpers. You'll have to pay 1 cash per number of card based on whichever row you have the most in. So here we only have 1 in each row, so the cost to buy a 2-pack is only going to be 1. If we had no cards, a 2-pack would be free. If we had 5 market stalls and 1 helper, we'd have to pay 5. Since the market stalls have the most, it's 1 per card. After you pay for your 2-pack, you're next going to take the top 2 cards off of the draw deck, and you're going to decide whether you want to keep both, 1, or neither. You can decide to discard or keep 1 or both. If you only keep 1, then you immediately play it to your play area following the normal rules. If you decide to keep both, you're going to stack one on top of the other. It's your decision. The bottom card is not going to get triggered until the top card is exhausted. So let's say we decide to stack it that way. We would put it into this area since the top card is a casual customer. And then once we fulfilled this and this card got discarded, this card would become active. It would immediately go to wherever it's supposed to go following the normal rules. Meaning that, let's say this card got triggered this round, this regular customer would now be expecting a delivery by the end of this action phase. And that'll go for any of the cards on the bottom of the 2-pack. Once they get revealed, they'll go to their designated spot. At the end of the action phase, you must now store your vegetables and have the option to move your scoring marker. To start the game, your storehouse only has a capacity of 1. This only comes into play at the end of the action phase. So this player has 3 vegetables, and unless they had no other way to use these by selling them or delivering them to customers, all but 1 would be discarded. You do have the option to pay 2 to flip your storehouse over. So let's say this player does this. They decide to pay the 2 money. They flip the card over. You only have to do that once. Now your storehouse can store 4 vegetables, and these can carry over safely. You now have the option to move your scoring marker. To move 1 position up always costs 1 money. It doesn't matter if you're here or all the way up here. Your first move up the track only costs 1. So pay this back to the bank, and this player can move up 1 spot. Any subsequent moves are going to cost the amount of the place going to. So now that this player has paid 1 to move up 1, to move another step would cost 3. So let's say they pay that to the bank also, and they get to move up again. To move up again would now cost 4. They don't have enough money for that, or maybe they choose not to go up because they want to carry money to the next round. They'll stop their movement on the prosperity or scoring track. The game is played over 9 rounds. You'll notice your home field has 9 spaces. So when you begin that final harvest of taking a resource off each of your fields, when you take that final one off the home field, you'll know you're beginning the final round. There won't be any more fields to flip over, but you're still going to complete all the phases in that final round to completion, and then you're ready to determine the winner. The winner will be the player highest on the score track or the prosperity track. Do not forget that at the end, now is the time for every loan card that a player has. They're going to have to move back 1 space on the track. The winner of the game will be the player highest on the score track. If there is a tie, whoever has the most remaining money. And if there's still a tie, it's the highest number of resources on all of the field cards and the cart card. Before we finish, let's cover all of the helper cards. There are two basic types of helper cards. The one with this red icon and balloon represent cards that directly interact with other players, and the ones with the standard black icon only affect your playing area. The first card we'll cover is the Harvest Helper. You'll see it has two different options. The first option can be used during the harvest phase. You can harvest 2 vegetables from each of your own fields that contain 4 or more vegetables, but not your home field. So if this was the harvest phase we were seeing, this is your home field, so even though it has 6 vegetables, it won't count. This field only has 1 vegetable. These two have at least 4 vegetables. So as you were harvesting, if you decided to play the Harvest Helper, you would do your normal harvest. But since these fields qualify, you have the option to take 2 resources off each of these fields and add them to your cart. The second option for the Harvest Helper is used during the action phase. Any and all fields that you plant in this action phase receive 1 additional vegetable token. So for example, if we were planting this field with a cabbage from our cart, you would normally plant with 1 seed, fill the card, you would add 1 additional vegetable if using the Harvest Helper in this way. The next card is the Squire. During the card phase, instead of taking 1 card from your hand and 1 card from the courtyard, you can take 1 card from your hand and up to 3 from the courtyard. The cards that you take from the courtyard immediately get played to your play area, following the normal rules. The next card is the Bookkeeper. You choose whether each vegetable space in your shop should be empty or full of the indicated vegetable, and in addition, you choose 1 type of vegetable, and for each field card, your home field included, on which this vegetable is planted, you receive 1 money. The Bookkeeper can be used normally in phase 3, but can also be used during the card phase if you're having to finance a field by selling a vegetable. So basically, you're going to decide the status of all these vegetables in your shop. You may decide, I'm going to clear off all these or fill these in. That'll help you either buy or sell better. And remember, in addition, you get to pick 1 vegetable type, and then for every field that you have it, you get 1 money. So if you picked grain in this example, you've got 2 fields with grain, you would get 2 money. Next is the Official. In the action phase, you're allowed to buy a 2-pack for free, regardless of the number of market stalls or helper cards you have. Next is the Shopper. You're able to buy 1 vegetable from the supply, not from your shop, and the vegetable would cost 2 less than you would normally have to pay for it in your shop. Next is the Haggler. Once only, you can buy 2 vegetables of the same kind in your shop for the price of 1. And if you combine this with the Shopper, you can take those 2 vegetables from the supply rather than the shop. But if you're playing the Haggler by itself, you have to make sure that you at least have 2 vegetables in your shop to buy. For example, if you want to take advantage of this to get beans, you see you only have 1 bean in your shop, so it would not help you. Next is the Merchant. You may buy for 1 money 1 of any vegetable that you must deliver at least twice to your regular customers in this round. So in this example, we can see our regular customers are looking for beans and leeks and pumpkins and leeks. So since we have to deliver leeks twice in this round, that would qualify. So we could buy a leek from our shop for only 1. We would have to have 1 in our shop. And if you combine the Merchant with the Haggler and you have a qualifying vegetable, you can buy 2 from your shop for the 1 money. And if you combine the Merchant with the Shopper, you can buy that vegetable from the supply. And you'll remember the Shopper gives you a 2 discount. So since the cost of the Merchant is only 1, you would get that for free if you're combining that with the Shopper helper. Next is the Maid. During the action phase, you may exchange vegetables 1-to-1 at all market stall spaces where you would usually have to trade in 2 vegetables for 1. So for example, if you're using the Maid helper and you wanted to get that leek, instead of having to use 2 here, you'd only have to trade in 1 vegetable. Next is the market crier. This gives you 2 options. The first option is you can refill all your market stalls with vegetables, or you can sell 1 to 3 vegetables from your market stalls to your shop, getting your shop prices and earning a maximum of 3 money. So the first option, you could fill up these spaces again by putting tokens back on, enabling them for future trades, or instead you could sell up to 3 of these back to your shop, getting your normal selling price up to 3 money. The next helper is the plowman. Again, you have 2 options. You can return all vegetables from one of your fields that contain at least 2 vegetables to the supply. It does not count your home field. And then this basically makes the field eligible to be re-sowed. Or the second option is you can immediately harvest vegetables from all fields that contain exactly 1 vegetable token, again, not from your home field. So as long as a field contains at least 2 tokens, you can decide to clear that 1 field, discard the tokens to the supply, making it eligible to be re-sowed. Or the second option is for all fields that have exactly 1 token, you can immediately harvest those. Next is the tenant farmer. You have 2 options here. Your first option is you can pay 3 money to choose 1 field from your pile of private fields. You can't change the order, but you would play it immediately. So this would allow you to look through your pile, select 1, and play it. Again, you're not allowed to change the order. The second option of the tenant farmer is you can place 1 of your empty fields from your field area. As long as it hasn't been sown yet, you put it under your pile of private fields and you select 1 other field from your pile and play it, again without changing the order of the pile. So as long as 1 of the fields here hasn't been played, you could put this at the bottom of the deck, look at the deck and select 1 other card and play it out. Again, you can't change the order. And if you select a field that requires the 2 money and put it at the bottom of the deck, when it comes up naturally, you're not required to finance it. Next is the messenger boy. You can deliver twice to any or each of your regular customers in the action phase. Basically, you're placing 2 vegetables on each of the regular 2 vegetable spaces, and you're collecting the payment twice. So let's say for this customer, if you're playing the messenger boy and you're making the delivery, instead of just doing this once, since you have the resources, you would basically stack them like that onto the card. So you're making the delivery twice to this regular customer, and then you would earn the payment twice, so 16 money. Next is the saleswoman, who gives you 2 different options. The first option is to turn all your satisfaction markers to the blue side. And remember, during the action phase, you perform any actions in the order you choose. So you decide when to address customers. So in this example, you may decide, I am not going to deliver to this customer that's expecting vegetables. So I would turn that token over to the red side and indicate that I've at least addressed it. Now I play my saleswoman and I turn all my markers to blue. This marker got turned to blue, but this customer is still expecting a delivery. The second option for the saleswoman, during the current action phase, your casual customers, if you satisfy them, pay a bonus of +2 money on the base price for all deliveries, regardless of how many regular customers you have. The next helper is the foreman. This allows you to take 1 helper immediately after it's placed on the discard pile by you or another player. So right away, when a helper gets placed on the discard pile, you can play your foreman and immediately take that card. The next card is the subsistence farmer. This allows you to take 1 vegetable from a field belonging to another player and pay the owner 1 money. The field must contain at least 4 vegetable tokens and cannot be the home field. So from another player's fields, it can't be the home, and it has to at least have 4 vegetable tokens. Next is the market woman. Here you can exchange one of your market stalls for another player's market stall and refill them both. And keep in mind, any cards under the market stalls that are revealed during the swap are moved to the appropriate play area. So in this example, this player plays the market woman and they decide to swap this market stall with this player's market stall. They flip cards and both market stalls are refilled with vegetable tokens. Next is the trader. Trader allows you to trade 1 vegetable at another player's market stall. If you do this in round 8, you must pay that player 1 money, and if you do it in round 9, you have to pay them 2. And if you use the trader in conjunction with the maid, when you do that trade at another player's market stall, you get the 1-to-1 ratio. The next card is the delivery man. This allows you to deliver to another player's regular customer and take the proceeds yourself. If you make the last delivery to that customer, you must pay the owner 2 money from the proceeds. So let's say you play the delivery man and you want to deliver to this customer. You would simply take the tokens like you normally would from your cart, place them on the card, and take the 6 money. A delivery is still expected by this player if they haven't already addressed the customer. And as the card stated, if you're making the final delivery to that regular customer, you have to give that player 2 from the proceeds, and that would trigger this card to be discarded. The next helper is the tout. This allows you to exchange one of your casual customers for a casual customer belonging to another player. Any revealed cards underneath are placed in the played area. The second option for the tout is you can buy a casual customer from another player by paying them 2 money, but you must immediately serve that customer with vegetables. And the final card is the con man. This allows you to exchange this helper for a helper belonging to another player as long as they have already completed their action phase. You would give them the con man and you would take their helper. And that should be everything you need to set up and play at the gates of Loyang.